the greater the knowledge, the keener the pain. Though the world's dreamers are sufficiently endowed with knowledge of a transcendent order, they are denied knowledge of the price their dreams will exact. Perhaps it is well that such is the case. Otherwise the world might never learn of the dreams. As the dreamer of 1926-27 could not foresee the flagellation his dream would inflict, neither could he anticipate the stupendous forces to be mustered for his dream's confirmation. It was almost 20 years to a day, in October 1946, when the most powerful force for confirmation began to function beyond his most ardent expectations. It brought realization of his hopes of 20 years before, when he had visited another of the world's pioneering eccentrics in the person of Dr. Robert Goddard at Clark University at Worcester, Massachusetts. Dr. Goddard was then painstakingly experimenting with rocket construction in his cell-like laboratory at the university. He too was denied funds for the perfection of his particular dream. And he heard the customary mockery reserved for dreamers of all ages. Though there was then realized the possibilities of physical continuity's confirmation through the medium of the rocket, there was little expectation of the rocket's early perfection and the extraordinary part it was destined to play in procuring confirming data. Hence there was unrestrained enthusiasm when, in October 1946, the U.S. Naval Research Bureau's V-2 rocket was sensationally projected into the perpetual stratosphere darkness beyond the sky enveloping the desert community of White Sands, New Mexico. There, at the altitude of 65 miles, its camera developed from the terrestrial sky area being photographed an undeniable replica of that which had been described as early as 1927. That original photograph over White Sands conformed in almost every respect with the revolutionary drawing of 1930. The only difference was that the rocket's drift developed an angle view of the disk areas presented by the drawing. Had the photograph been on the perpendicular, there would have been developed one of the drawing's luminous disk areas. That original 1930 drawing of terrestrial skylight illusions has been reproduced as Figure 4. It merits reader observation and study, because it is the key for realizing factual universe values. The U.S. Navy's rocket camera photographs prove that any camera lens at sufficient stratosphere altitude will show every photographed outer sky area of the Earth as a luminous and deceptively globular and isolated entity, or body. The photograph contains an angle view of the disk. A photograph on the perpendicular would show one of the assumed isolated bodies telescopically observed of the celestial. It proved the illusion in centuries of astronomical observation of the universe about us, for the luminous disk surface area must impose the delusion of an isolated globular body. In the light of such sensational rocket camera performance within infinity's dark stratosphere corridor, high hope was held for the photograph's influence. It was reasonably believed that the photograph would arouse the lethargic guardians of the mathematical universe and afford realization of the skylight illusions of the ages. However, in spite of such memorable achievement, there was no apparent awakening of the self-appointed arbiters of the universe pattern. Their evident lack of discernment accentuated the Christly dictum, "None are so blind as they who will not see." Accordingly, even as the remorseless truth of previous unorthodox disclosure was presented, the globular misconception caused the development of a series of misinterpretations of that photograph and others that followed. The misinterpretations represent forlorn attempts to keep intact the fallacious mental portrait of a mathematically isolated globe Earth. Though stratosphere photographs of terrestrial outer sky areas hold abundant proof that globularity and isolation are illusory, Their message is too profound for understanding and acceptance. My truth is the truth. So say we all. It is sacred, and it must be preserved, even though it contradicts fact. Hence, to escape the reality which would dethrone the accepted truth, the terrestrial sky area photograph at 65 miles was concluded to be an area of the distant celestial. That conclusion, though lacking foundation, stemmed from the assumption that the rocket camera had tilted as the rocket, reaching its flight limit in the stratosphere, turned and began its descent, and the first photograph was assumed to be a segment of a celestial globe body millions of miles away. The fact remains that the camera need not have tilted, as assumed. The mere turning of the rocket in its gliding, or drifting, descent would have caused the camera to record at an angle the globular terrestrial sky area which the rocket was approaching. Subsequent photographs over the same terrestrial sky area confirmed the latter conclusion. It is readily perceived that in the rocket's turning, the camera lens could not reproduce the entire terrestrial sky area as it would have been photographed on the perpendicular. Hence, at the second of rocket turning, only an arc of the completed disk sky area could be detected by the lens. It resulted in an incomplete disk area being shown. Asterisk, the camera lens's function was not changed. It was developing a disk through detection at an angle. Thereafter, it was compelled to produce only angles of a disk because the rocket continued to drift. There was no chance for a perpendicular photograph of the sky area. Had there been, the photographs after rocket turning would have shown a complete disk area comparable to those of Figure 4. Naturally, when any one of such disk areas is detected, it must deceptively appear to be isolated. There must appear to be space between the disk sky areas. That is what provides the basis for the isolation misconception. The lens that was capable of converging luminous terrestrial sky area at a distance of 55 miles was therefore assumed to have photographed a celestial area assumed to be millions of miles away. Very interesting. To avoid any possibility of confusion, let us assert that the figure 55 miles is accurate. Though the rocket's altitude was 65 miles, it was only 55 miles from the outer sky surface being photographed. The distance from the Earth's surface to the sky is from 7 to 10 miles. The 10-mile figure is utilized here for convenience, and the difference between 7 and 10 miles has little or no meaning for the illustration. The lens detecting what was falsely claimed to be an area of the celestial produced an identical outline in subsequent undisputed photographs of the same terrestrial sky area from a distance of 90 miles. The rocket's altitude was 100 miles. It is to be observed that if the camera had been in the rocket's tail, rather than in the nose, there would have been numerous full-disk photographs taken from the outer sky surface to the 90-mile stratosphere flight limit. They would have been produced prior to the displayed angle photograph taken at the time of rocket turn in the stratosphere. After the turn, all terrestrial sky photographs have to be taken by a camera in the rocket's nose as the rocket descends in a long glide, or drift. They would show disk angles depending upon the angle of rocket drift during descent. The angle photographs would continue to be taken until the rocket again penetrated the Earth's outer sky on its return to land surface. Such was in fact the procedure in the original photographing expedition. Hence the photographs showing only an angle of the terrestrial are as they should be. Moreover, though such an angle photograph need not have been of the immediate terrestrial sky area where the flight originated, it would then have to be a photograph of another terrestrial sky area beyond the point of flight origin at White's Sands. Nobody has ever beheld a telescopic photograph of any celestial area presented as only an angle view of a disk or as a segment of one of the many millions of so-called globe bodies. The reason is that the astronomers' telescopes are firmly anchored. They are not drifting through space as the rocket camera lens was doing when it detected luminous areas of the terrestrial sky. Hence, telescopic photography shows every area a complete disk. The ancient Galileo Galilei would not like only angles of a globe. He saw completely rounded globe bodies, and completely rounded globe bodies they must be. And they are but in the illusory. The manifest contradictions ensuing form publicized accounts, and copies of the terrestrial sky photographs were evidently not considered sufficiently misleading. There was presented for a popular mental journey in the circuitous land of assumption that which follows. A dark, aqueous appearing area in the lower left-hand corner of one of the terrestrial sky area photographs was proclaimed to be the Gulf of Mexico. There was, however, no mention of a light-penetrating medium being used. There are no doubt many who have enjoyed reading the interesting novel titled Island in the Sky. That title is in order for a book in the world of reality, but the designation Gulf of Mexico in the Sky is another thing, not of the world of reality, since it is not a book title. The former deals with the world of reality. Books and titles are of that world, whereas the latter deals, and only inasmuch as any dealing may be had, with things and conditions in a world that is not. To explain further, it is shown that the photographs taken at an altitude of 100 miles from the Earth's surface, or at about 90 miles from the terrestrial sky area being detected by the camera lens, had to present one of two things. Both conditions could not have simultaneously existed at the same terrestrial sky area. Either 1. The photograph with the aqueous appearing area is a true photograph of an area of the Earth's surface, accomplished through the medium of infrared, an extra-sensitive film which permitted the camera lens to penetrate the sky luminosity and reproduce the land surface under that sky area, in which case the surface details would not be reproduced with clarity. Or 2. The photograph was not taken with infrared light, in which case the lens did not penetrate the luminous outer sky and the photograph does not portray water, as claimed. Therefore, the area appearing as water represents nothing more than light variations and shadings of and within the photographed terrestrial skylight areas. It is just another light shading illusion like those developed in photographing celestial light. That light's natural activity has created and continues to create many of the grotesque entities of the astronomical world. To affirm suspected absence of infrared, there was not the customary mention of its application. If it was not utilized, the photograph's description has to be erroneous and expresses only that which was expected rather than that which the photograph contains. It is notorious that we all see only what we want to see, and believe only what we want to believe. It is truly held that primed observations are as dubious as spies. The matter of the Gulf of Mexico in the sky seems to be a case in point. The most substantial evidence indicating that the water-appearing area of the photograph is nothing more than light shading within a luminous terrestrial sky area lies in the fact that the area did look like water. The rocket camera lens could not have penetrated through skylight density without the aid of a special photographing emulsion, and if that emulsion was used it would have bleached the dark water under the luminous sky. It would have caused the dark water-appearing area of the photograph to be white, and therefore unlike a body of water in appearance. Moreover, the Gulf of Mexico could not have possibly reflected its known physical characteristics under photography through light and at the recorded distance. Rivers photographed in aerial photography at altitude not exceeding 5 miles lose their physical characteristics as rivers and become mere lines, or streaks, on the land surface. Such a condition develops in photography, which is not through skylight. Hence, when the photographing distance is multiplied 15 times and the lens is compelled to penetrate through skylight with the aid of infrared, one could hardly expect a clearer portrait of the real physical conditions or objects being photographed. Finally, by what favor of necromancy could a camera lens 90 miles from the photographed outer sky surface cause to be reproduced on the photograph the 90-mile sky level and the 100-mile land surface level? Particularly when one level was luminous and involved photography against the dark stratosphere background, whereas the other level required light for a photographing background. And how could the developed photograph of both levels show that the entire photograph area was luminous except for the small dark area of so-called Gulf of Mexico water? It would have to be concluded that there is no sky over the Gulf of Mexico. There was sky over the land area, because none of the land was shown. Had the lens penetrated the skylight, it would have detected land as well as water, but the so-called water area was but a small part of the complete photograph. Such modern magic would permit photographing the rug in one's living room and have an area of the developed photograph show a tub of water in a corner of the cellar while the remainder of the photograph showed objects in the living room over the cellar. Such photographic magic would be superior to the X-ray, which in photographing one level seems to miss the other. In this comparison, the interior and the exterior become equal to photographing levels. The simplest experiments establish that it is impossible to see what is on the opposite side of any luminous area or object. Try to look through the flame of a fire anywhere. Try to penetrate the luminosity of any kind of burner. It will be found that the luminosity of an electric light filament, or even the feeble flames of a burning gas jet or of a common match, will defy lens penetration. One must never lose sight of the fact that there exists no observing instrument that was not patterned after the human lens. The human lens is great and magnificent, but it is subject to many errors. Therefore, it must be held in mind that every lens holds the same elementary error as the optic lens. It demonstrates gross misunderstanding to claim that though the human lens is subject to error, the photographic lens overcomes the inherent error. It does no such thing. If it did, there would not be curves developed by the photographing lens. The advancement of telescopy through photographic recording of telescopically detected luminous celestial sky areas does not advance telescopic findings beyond the point attained when Galileo fashioned his telescope. At least insofar as the findings deal with the reality of celestial things and conditions, there has been no advancement. The mind of the astronomer must be influenced by the inherent error of the photographing lens as it is by the error of the telescope lens. And the enlargement of lens power in no way eliminates the error. In fact, magnification broadens the field of application for the original error. The unreal entities of such dual agents of detection are multiplied. And though the entities are unreal, they are more readily accorded the status of reality as a result of misplaced confidence in the ability of two detecting agents instead of one. As one proceeds along the astro-mathematical lane of enchantment, one finds that a subsequent rocket camera photograph, at an altitude of 150 miles, contains white cloud-like formations. They appeared on the same plane as the remainder of the photographed luminous sky area. Strange to relate, as the dark area of the previously described white cloud-like formations. They appeared on the same plane as the remainder of the photographed luminous sky area. Strange to relate, as the dark area of the previously described 100-mile altitude photograph was misinterpreted as water on the land level 10 miles under the photographed sky area, the white light formations of the new photograph were deduced as clouds in the stratosphere above the photographed sky area. Of course, the white skylight formations represent no such thing as clouds in the stratosphere. A light photograph says white, and the white outstanding on the photograph was intensification of natural skylight. The white light was more pronounced against the dark light shadings of a part of the photograph. Hence, though the white was more representative of skylight, it was considered to be detached from the skylight area. It was simply an aspect of the luminous terrestrial sky. Lack of reasonable reference to gas clouds formed within that particular gaseous sky area recalls the apt announcement of a famous scientist: "The world of the mathematician is peopled by all sorts of entities that never did or never could exist on land or sea, or in the universe about us." And we here take the liberty to add fittingly, nor in the luminous sky areas anywhere. It may be appropriate to record that the clouds of common reference are restricted to formation within the Earth's region of atmospheric density. That region extends from sea level to about 6 miles above the Earth's surface. Clouds are produced as a result of atmospheric conditions prevailing throughout that atmospheric area. That same atmospheric region extends throughout the entire universe, contrary to the conclusions of astrophysics. It need not come as revelation to stipulate that clouds, as commonly referred to in a world of reality, are supposed to contain moisture or the chemical potential for moisture. The moisture of such atmospheric clouds may develop into rain, hail, or snow. It would be extremely fascinating to witness the production of rain and snow from the gaseous elements of any skylight area, where, because of the particular sky gas elements, clouds could never form. Celestial and terrestrial sky areas do contain gas clouds, but it would be a revelation if they were afforded due consideration in astronomical conclusions about celestial skylight areas. That consideration would dispel a great deal of cosmic mystery and would permit even astronomers a view of the realistic universe. It would prove equally sensational to witness rain and snow from the stratosphere. If one harbors the idea that atmospheric cloud formation could develop in the stratosphere region of negligible atmospheric density, the thought may be dispelled with knowledge of the factor denying stratosphere cloud formation. That factor is the cosmic ray activity prevalent in the stratosphere at all times. Its forceful movement is ceaseless. Hence, insufficiency of atmospheric density and the constant movement of powerful cosmic rays prohibit cloud formation. The rays would ruthlessly rupture embryo cloud elements attempting to collect in the stratosphere. A stratosphere explorer described cosmic ray activity as follows: "They bombarded the stratosphere gondola from all directions." And if their activity could bombard a metal gondola, how much more effective would be their activity against a cloud formation? Therefore, the problem raised by the announcement of clouds in the stratosphere over New Mexico is comparable to the negative problem of early scholastic hours, when the problem presented denied the problem: what happens when an immovable object meets an irresistible force? Without the necessity for applying abstruse mathematics, it is to be discerned that an immovable object could not be known in the presence of an irresistible force, and vice versa. One must deny the existence of the other at the same time and place. If the object be immovable, it can experience no irresistible force. If the force be irresistible, there cannot exist an immovable object for that force. Hence, for clouds, as commonly known, to exist in the stratosphere, they would have to be more formidable as a force than the perpetual cosmic force behind cosmic ray activity. That force behind is another seeming problem compounded by deduction. Stratosphere explorers have experienced the action of cosmic rays, but there is no record of their having experienced clouds. An important aspect of the Copernican theory was that the stratosphere, then unknown and unexplored, is a vacuum, or an approximation thereto, or even cosmic rays have to be excluded for perfection of theory. However, the mechanical devices of modern stratosphere ascension and rocket flights have determined the presence and have registered the activity of heretofore unknown stratosphere elements. It has thereby been established that the early ether theory, or conceptual void, is only of assumptive value to sustained other assumptions of the theory. The function of natural law, when the universe was created, precluded any possibility of vacuum throughout the constructed universe whole. And nature, because of her perennial productivity, abhors a vacuum. She has nothing to work with in vacuums. The nearest approach to vacuum has been achieved by man in his terrestrial laboratories, rather than by nature acting as a tireless agent of creative force throughout the universe. Therefore, in consideration of values established in a world of reality, the conclusion must be that the stratosphere photographs of terrestrial sky areas reproduce skylight conditions exclusively. The dark shading is as much a part of the luminous sky area as the white. Such conditions correspond with those observed in luminous celestial areas, and they establish that all necessary confirmation of the 1927 disclosures have been procured. Inasmuch as the photographs proved the terrestrial sky areas preset the same luminous and deceptively globular and isolated appearance as all other areas of the universe, it is shown that every luminous celestial area holds the same chemical elements responsible for terrestrial sky luminosity. Hence the sky is universal. Since it is therefore established that the continuous terrestrial sky will deceptively appear to be comprised of isolated globular areas, logic dictates that every seemingly globular and isolated area of the celestial is in fact as continuous and connected as the luminous terrestrial sky. That the areas of the Earth's outer luminous sky deceptively appear globular and isolated makes it manifest that the globularity and isolation of celestial areas is likewise purely illusory. Since there exists ample sky illumination to obscure the land at an altitude of 10 miles, there is no possibility for rocket camera lenses to penetrate the greater luminosity of sky areas at altitudes from 65 miles to 150 miles. Photographs at such greater altitudes have a darker stratosphere background than at the 10-mile altitude. Hence sky luminosity is more pronounced and it represents a more formidable barrier for lens penetration. To return to the period 1931 to 1935, the pioneer stratosphere explorer Auguste Piccard was unable to photograph any of the Earth's surface at the altitude of 10 miles. That altitude permitted penetration only to the outer sky surface. However, though Piccard had not emerged into the stratosphere proper, his publicized description of what he saw was, the Earth appeared as an illuminated upturned disk. The conclusion is sustained by Piccard's observation after the ascension of 1931, the Earth was taking on a copper-colored tinge. That tinge represented primary illumination. It was sufficient to obscure the land only 10 miles away. At the photographing altitudes of the rocket camera, the sky area had long since developed from the primary copper-colored stage into an extremely luminous, seemingly globular area. As the photoluminosity of the sky area was being developed because of increased altitude, the camera lens was drawing the sky area's partial disk into a complete and apparently isolated disk, so that the partial disk detected at 10 miles was a complete disk, or globe, at the greater altitudes. No amount of increased lens power in the rocket camera could have altered the related development. In fact, any notable increase of lens power when photographing such luminous terrestrial and celestial sky areas will contribute to greater distortion of the luminous area and will in no way contribute to penetration of the luminosity. Increase of lens power will impose an oppressive magnification of the light, and it will cause the light, which normally photographs as white, to present a pockmarked appearance of light pits and fissures. Then the skylight area might appear to be covered with canyons, corresponding to the so-called canyons shown in photographs of the moon.
The two frequently publicized astronomical canyons on the moon and canyons on Mars are produced through the same agency of the illusory, the magnification and distortion of skylight. Recently exhibited photographs of luminous celestial areas detected by the 200-inch telescope lens afford eloquent expression of the distortions ensuing from magnification of luminous sky areas. The flaunted power of that lens, often referred to as the white elephant of Mount Palomar, would create the same distortions in terrestrial sky areas if it were located on any celestial land area.
Asterisks as the optic lens projects the desert mirage to play upon one's fancy. The camera lens that developed light variations and light shadings in a luminous sky area over white sands produces corresponding illusions, which foster popular delusions of the universe about us. That lens is capable of projecting a lake or a canyon in the luminous outer sky over the lakeless and canyonless Times Square land area of New York City, or in any other sky area of the universe. The formidable factor of light distortion will cause the weaving of fantastic canyons in the luminous outer sky over the flat Sahara Desert and the equally flat wheat fields of Kansas. It has woven them in the luminous celestial sky enveloping that part of the universe designated as Mars. The canyons of Mars have no more reality than that which would attach to canyons on the Sahara Desert and on the flat wheat fields of Kansas. Only as such canyons might exist on the flat unbroken plains and deserts of terrestrial reality do they exist for telescopic detection anywhere in the celestial. They are restricted to the light of the sky, and they are a natural development of the magnification of sky gas movement. As previously explained, and like the proclamation of an ardent wooer's love, it cannot be too often repeated. Every area of the universe about us possesses the identical sky which covers the Earth. It is of varying shades of blue when observed from terrestrial and celestial land surface, and it is luminous when observed against stratosphere darkness. It should not be too arduous an effort to discern that every astronomically defined star, planet, and nebula is representative of celestial skylight. There are many millions of luminous celestial areas that must deceptively appear to be isolated as stars. The natural function of sky gas makes every area a potential projector of grotesque entities that never did and never can exist in a universe reality. Though there exists on every part of the continuous celestial terrain the physical characteristics of terrestrial territory, the plains, the mountains, the oceans, the rivers, and the lakes, no lens, regardless of its power, has ever detected such physical characteristics through the luminous sky. The intensity of sky luminosity has no bearing whatever on the power of the lens to penetrate it. The most brilliant light and the most vague light provide equal barriers to lens penetration. Our modern ability to penetrate into the great unknown provides uplifting knowledge that the creative scheme does not conform to astronomical interpretation. The grotesque entities of astronomical definition are shown to be products of lens manufacture. Their value is mythical in the realistic universe structure.